What's up, hobby friends? My name is Casey and welcome back to another miniature rescue. This week, I found some old forgotten sisters of battle that absolutely still deserve a seat at the table. This video is sponsored by FLEXISPOT, but more on that in a little bit. Over the years, I've acquired quite a few models, and there are times when I kinda completely forget that I had some project in mind. It's one of those things in the hobby that I feel like a lot of us can relate to. There is always something new and shiny to look forward to, and some new set of minis or rules that we want to go all in on. Well, this week, I was rummaging around in some cabinets and I stumbled across an old box that I almost completely forgot about. The last time that I touched this box was the week that I moved from my old hobby space and into the one I am currently occupying. I had started some old Sisters of Battle, specifically the old Seraphim models, but I didn't get too far past getting them stripped down and ready for paint. Ironically, when I opened the box, those models weren't actually inside. Instead, I found these glorious metal Battle Sisters. I think it's pretty funny that this little box just has a bunch of random sisters in it, but not the ones that I was actually expecting. I quite like these old metal minis, and I think it's time that they get a good rescue. They've been painted, but these minis are pretty old these days, so the paint is worn away, and overall they just need to be taken down the metal and cleaned up. The goal will be to strip the paint using a combination of acetone and isopropyl alcohol. I start by getting the models removed from their bases. I don't want to melt the plastic in the acetone. So just a quick check that there aren't any plastic parts going in, and I drop them into the abyss. The acetone does a ton of work by eating away at the paint. It doesn't take much time to get the paint mostly removed, although some of these models are being a little bit stubborn. Acetone will work getting all of this paint off. Some scrubbing and letting them soak, and you will get the models back to metal no matter what. But to illustrate another method that I've grown quite fond of recently, I'm going to get out my sonic cleaner and get the paint off a little faster. The sonic cleaner is filled with water, but the models get placed into a jar of 97% isopropyl alcohol, which is very flammable and can be dangerous in a sonic cleaner, hence the jar surrounded by water. The water is just the solution to protect against fire, and to cover the jar so vibrations can travel through the liquid and cavitate isopropyl bubbles on our minis. That cavitation or implosion of bubbles penetrates into all of the crevices of the minis and actually breaks the paint up, and it just floats away. The longer we do this, the more that process happens, and the more paint is removed, while acetone dissolves that actual paint, so it's a different process. I am going to help things along though, and use an old toothbrush to wipe away most of the excess paint. Let's let these minis get a breath of fresh air again. I like to do a final pass on metal minis with a soft wire brush as well to go over the metal and clean it up, and get any paint that I might have missed while cleaning with a toothbrush. But before we continue, let me tell you about today's excellent sponsor. I've talked a lot about FLEXISPOT and their awesome desks and chairs, but did you know that they make beds too? Yeah, I was surprised at first, but honestly, if they nail ergonomic furniture, it kind of makes sense that they'd build great beds. So I decided it was time to upgrade this hobby space, because let's be real, painting minis can be exhausting. FLEXISPOT sent me their Japanese Joinery Bed, full size with a headboard, mattress, riser, and a clean oak finish. It looks pretty sharp. Now, I've had some rough beds in the past, wobbly builds, weird corners that destroy your shins, stuff you end up having to try and fix yourself, but not this time. Right out of the box, the quality stood out to me. The wood is rubber wood, a legitimate hard wood, and it's pretty heavy. You can feel how sturdy that this bed is going to be once it's all put together. And the joinery, super cool. It's Japanese joinery, so the pieces slide and lock together without screws or bolts. It feels rock solid and comes together really quickly and smoothly. The customization is also next level. On their site, you can pick out all kinds of add-ons and variations. I went with a headboard and a lifting motor for the top half of the bed, and that honestly might be the best feature of all. Not only can I take mini naps in my mini space, but I can actually sit up in bed to paint minis or read a book. The lift function is buttery smooth and super comfortable. There's even 10.2 inches of storage underneath the bed, which means that I can get to all my hobby gear without even having to get out of bed. It's like they designed this bed for miniature painters. But seriously, this thing is built to last. Real hardwood, great construction, and surprisingly affordable for the quality. Plus, there's no waiting. They've got these boxed up and ready to ship with delivery to your bedroom in 3 to 5 days. So if you're looking to upgrade your bedroom or your hobby space, click the link below to experience the FLEXISPOT bed frame for yourself. Don't miss out. Use my code for an instant discount. Transform your sleep with comfort, convenience, and unmatched value. Thanks again, FLEXISPOT, for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back to those minis. I can also hit any mold lines at this point, as well as sand any rough edges down with sanding sticks, going back over them with the wire brush to clean them off and buff the metal. While the models were in the sonic cleaner and during the cleanup process, I was running a 3D printer with some really great base toppers from Zabavka Workshop. These bases are the Adepta set, which kind of makes sense why these would work perfectly for these particular models. Go figure. They are nice though, and I'm excited to get these painted up and get the models looking their absolute best. Now that everything is clean and printed, we can start by getting the models and bases loaded up onto painting handles for painting. I start by snipping off all of the metal tabs on the models. Those are really only good for slotted bases, and in 2025, we just don't see a ton of them anymore, so it's fine. These are metal models though, and in order to actually stay glued down, the models are going to have to be pinned. With a hand drill, I put a little paper clip sized hole into each of the model's feet, so that when we are finished painting, they can be pinned down to the new bases. For now, I'm going to put these on to painting handles, so that we can do everything separately. Now that all of that is taken care of, I can finally get some new primer on these models. Luckily, it's finally warm outside, so I grabbed a bottle of black primer spray paint and got everything covered. Now that they are fresh, I can let them live a little by leaving them outside to dry for a while. I'm sure it's been a long time since these minis have actually seen daylight. While those cook, we can take care of the bases that I already sprayed and left out in the sun to dry. I'm going to make things pretty simple for these and dry brush a variety of grays onto the stone, starting with dark and working my way up to a pretty bright gray for the edges. This gives all the stones a decent look while not taking up a ton of time. From there, I pick out some of the designs to be metallic, which we can weather down for some variety. Add a little red, spot it into the recessed designs, kind of like the floor was just painted a long time ago and it's beginning to wear away. Verdigris over the metallic details and wiped away makes it look a lot older, and I think this will do really nicely for these models. Pretty straightforward, but it will contrast nicely with the dark armor and red cloth. After baking in the sun, I brought everything back inside and started to lay down some paint on the minis. I'll start with a layer of black over the primer, just in case I need to touch anything up later on, and follow that up with a dark blue-gray, just to give the armor a little bit of a highlight. Nothing too crazy. The first major base coat will be the red cloth. I'm using a pretty dark red to start. That way we get good coverage with the darker color, and we can get that kind of two-tone cloth going. The inside of the cloth is traditionally a different color, so this will do fine for that. Some darker pink flesh tone on the faces, which I'm not too worried about being a little messy because the hair will get filled in later and cover a lot of that up. But a good base coat on the skin is important. It needs to be thin, and the black will show through for at least the first couple of coats. But I don't want to clog any details by trying to go too opaque too quickly, so multiple thin layers on the face. In between those layers of skin color, I fill in all of the other details with a dark silver metallic. There's stuff that will eventually be covered by gold, but I want to make sure and hit everything right now so it's covered and I know exactly what will be some kind of metallic down the road. I can pick either one later on, still a dark base coat that the gold will look good over. There are a whole bunch of leather pouches on each mini as well as gloves. I don't want to make them black because the armor is already very dark, so I mix some black in with brown to get a very dark brown for the base coat. From there, I can mix some orange brown and start to lighten up the upper half of the gloves and put some texture into that leather. Just little touches here and there to give the idea of scratched leather. I finished those off with some pink and white mixed into all of those browns that I used so far, and that gave me a nice highlight to place the final little touches. Mostly to pick out the edges of the pouches and make sure that fingers on the models stand out individually. Since I'm layering colors, I might as well take care of the cloth on all of the models. I am trying to batch paint these all at the same time, so one after the other. I use a nice bright red to go over the cloth. For the first layer, I do cover almost everything except the very deepest recesses. There are a few spots that end up staying that darker red, but for the most part, everything is being covered with this new red. Slowly, I start to introduce some orange red into the mix as well. That will start to really saturate the red and brighten up the edges of detail. And finally, I can edge highlight with that red orange to really make that color stand out. After the red is looking nice, I can move on to picking out the gold details. Their necks have this tube skull apparatus that is gold, and their medallions get hit as well. I also decided that the fleur-de-lis on the knees and backpack would look nice in gold. There really isn't a ton of it, so it looks pretty nice against the red and black. And that pretty much takes care of the base coats, and the models look very much like a cleaned up version of what we started with, so I'm happy with where things are going so far. Now we can move on to the faces. I like to start by taking the shadows down even more with some dark purple red, thinned down quite a bit. I lay this down underneath the cheekbones and across the lips to start. We want the shape of the layers to be in a triangle from the eyes to the chin. That way it thins out their faces a bit and gives these old sculpts a chance to actually look like faces. Some of them are kind of weird looking. Then I come back in with a base skin tone and put that onto the nose and cheeks and chin to create that triangle of color. Once that layer is looking good, I can add some lighter pink to the mix and start to lighten up the cheeks and nose, sharpening that detail a little bit with each pass. Depending on how things are going, I can also bring back that dark purple to push down the shadows a bit more. Being really thin and glazing this under the cheekbones blend that color in nicely as well. So it's usually a good idea to go back and forth with these colors until you get something that looks pretty nice. Just have to make sure to keep it thin. For the eyes, which I've got to say, these are stupidly tiny, I will lay down some of that dark purple mixed in with just a little bit of black on top of that section. Bigger than the actual eyes, so it looks like eyeshadow and gives us room to work to make their actual eyes. After you get a nice shape, you can come in with some bright gray or off-white and put that same shape, only smaller, so that the darker color surrounds the lighter color. Then, as carefully as you can, put some black into those eyes to make pupils. If that ends up being a little bit too big, you can always work your way back up by putting that gray on either side of the black, and then lining the top and bottom with the purple-black mix you started with. It's always a pain at this size, but if you get something that looks good on the table, then I wouldn't worry about it too much. I definitely got some pretty good results on a few of these, and there were a couple that kind of ended up being weird looking at certain angles. It's kind of how it goes, but on the table, they look good. You win some, you lose some, so I'm okay with the level of derp on some of these models. Finally, to bring in the last bit of sweet detail, I'm going to stamp on some fleur-de-lis onto their arms. I'll be using the Goblin Hobby Stampin' Kit to do this, so let's get that out and I can show you what I'll be doing. The starter kit here has black and white, and we have red and gray available. I did a quick test with black and gray, and I really like how the gray sits on that red. Looks more like it's part of the cloth rather than a sticker or something. The black is okay, but there's already so much black that it kind of gets lost. So bright gray, I think, is the way to go. I will be using the Heraldry 002 plate, which has several variations of fleur-de-lis in several sizes available. I like this little one in the corner, so I'm going to grab out my bright gray Stampin' color and lay that over the top of that design. Using the scraper card that comes in the starter kit, I'm going to scrape quickly but evenly across the design to get that excess off. Now that the color is beginning to dry, I grab my stamper and lightly but quickly roll my stamper over the top of that design, making sure not to put too much pressure on it and being as even with my roll as I can be. The design gets lifted onto the stamper and I can look down the end and line it up on the model. I press down and as you can see, the design is now on the cloth of the model. Since I'm talking about it, I did want to mention that one of the biggest hurdles with this process is getting that image picked up nicely. Not too much pressure and being quick about the roll works really well. I will do the rest here so you can kind of see what I mean. Another hiccup that I typically see is in the scrape, getting that excess off the top. Now there's always some paint left over on the plate, but it dries before you go to pick it up, so there isn't any need to scrape more than once to get that top layer off the design. The layer inside the design's recess will still be wet, and that's what gets picked up, not the lines of paint on the flat surface of the plate itself. Anyway, those are probably the biggest factors for success with this product, and there will be tutorials about it up on the Goblin Hobbies YouTube channel. For now though, look at how awesome these sisters look with that little bit of extra effort. Honestly, that's why I love this process. It just makes them look even better than they already do, and it just doesn't take much time. I finished all 10 of these in just a few minutes. It was kind of a happy accident that I ended up picking these models for this week's video. I saw that box and I knew there was going to be something good inside. A little bit of work, and these models have come a long way. They probably haven't been on the table in years at this point, and I'm happy to say that they are back and ready for action. I plan on using them for probably Kill Team for now, but I do have my eyes on more of these fantastic models, so who knows what the future will bring. Thank you again for joining me on another miniature rescue. If you like something about this video, please consider hitting that like button, sharing this video with your hobby friends, and subscribing for more miniature rescues. Once again, I'm Casey, and I will see you in the next video. And of course, here are the completed Sisters of Battle Battle Sisters. Thanks again for watching.